Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is fix. Fix. And by that I don't mean like fix something, but how we fix our gaze, fix our eyes on Jesus. And here in the book of Esther, as we see, I believe that Mordecai had his eyes fixed on God. And knowing that there was a plan for him and in his life, and because he was a Jew and all that they had seen and experienced, I believe that he knew God had a special plan for him as well. Now, yesterday we talked about the favor that had fallen on Esther, and you cannot read the story without seeing the influence of Mordecai as well. So today and I almost said Ezra, in Esther chapter 3, I'm going to look at verses 5 and 6 today, but at the end of chapter 2, you'll see an interesting interaction that Mordecai hears about a plan and a scheme to kill the king. Now, you think about this. I mean, this is essentially the enemy king, right? Those who had been ruling and reigning over them as Jewish people. And even though they were allowed to go back, but hadn't gone back for whatever reason. But now this is the enemy king, and he puts forth word to go through Esther to say, hey, look, you need to warn the king that this is going on. And so it ends up saving the king's life. And that's interesting how it plays out later in the story. But now, here in chapter 3, you see basically the king's right hand man, Haman, who has been lifted up to be the right hand man, the kind of the second in charge. And he, for whatever reason, Mordecai, right, does not bow down to him. And that just really bugs Haman. So here, Esther chapter 3, looking at verses 5 and 6, when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. Now, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of speculation, some even going back that it didn't have, that Mordecai would bow down to the king, but not to Haman. Right, that he would bow down to those in authority, but not to Haman, and some will even take it back to say that it had to do with his name and his lineage and going back, family lines, as that's what started the debate. But regardless of really what the reason was, I still see the providence of God even in this. I believe that God had put it in Mordecai's heart not to bow to Haman, and at the same time, he had allowed the hardness of Haman's heart, kind of like we see the hardening of the Pharaoh, right? As we go through Pharaoh and Moses there at the beginning of the Jewish people being there in Egypt. And as you see that hardening of heart going on there, I think he did the same thing with Haman. Is that now Haman didn't just want to go after Mordecai because he said, look, this Jew is not going to bow down to me. What? You'll find out Haman has this superior attitude, right? He's very prideful, and he thinks a whole lot of himself. It's at one point where you'll find in the story that he even comes thinking that the king is going to really lift him up and do all these great things for him. So he comes up with a great list of what the king can do to bless him. But what happens here is now, because Mordecai has not bowed down to him, now he has decided that not only Mordecai has to die, but all the Jews. And this is a turning point in the story because Esther's a Jew. Nobody knows it other than Mordecai. But Esther's a Jew, and now here she is the queen. So how is this going to play out? So as you're reading, right, if you haven't read the whole story, I still encourage you to do that. But you may wonder what's going on. Now, when I say fix your eyes, right, when we talk about that word fix, Haman had his eyes fixed on the Jews. The enemy had their eyes fixed on God's people. But God's people, if they're doing right, they'll have their eyes fixed on God. And so if Mordecai was fixed on God and said, I'm not going to bow down to any of these people, only to God, then that's definitely one way that would warrant Haman getting upset. But knowing that Mordecai was in the right. Even further than that is when we have our eyes fixed on God, we'll do what we need to do, right? We'll even when you find out that, as he did in chapter 2, you find out that somebody was trying to hurt someone in authority, that he reported it like he ought to. See, God was working a plan. God was working all these things together, because that one little intervention on Mordecai's part is what ends up leading him to have favor in the king's eyes later. And now that Haman, the enemy, has so fixed his gaze on destroying the Jewish people, that he realizes that he doesn't realize that he's actually destroying his own life and the life of his family. But all throughout this, I can't help but think today, what do you have your eyes fixed on? Who is your gaze fixed on? Are you more focused on what the enemy's doing to go against you? Or are you more focused on what God has in store for you? Today, who will you fix your eyes on? What circumstances will you fix your eyes on? What providential care will you fix your eyes on today? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.